And I think that diversity is wonderful, but I also think it's important for us to have what I call inclusion. So how can everybody be at the table in terms of really supporting and benefiting from all the services that are present within District 7?
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Life, a weekly online radio show sharing ideas, opinions, and news about the city of Peachtree Corners. Now, your host, Rico Figliolini.
Hi, this is Rico Figliolini. I'm host of Peachtree Corners Life. This is the Peachtree Corners Life show in the city of Peachtree Corners. I'm glad you can join us. Or if you're viewing this on demand, that's great too. And if you're listening to this as a podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or anything else, just leave us a review like that, because we could go a little further up in those searches when you're searching out for us. I have a special guest today. Before we get to him, I just want to say thank you to Hargray Fiber for being a sponsor of our family of podcasts. They're a fiber company that works with a lot of businesses, small businesses and homes, but they're really involved in the small business community and mid-sized companies here in the city of Peachtree Corners and throughout the Southeast, actually, providing fiber solutions to companies. And especially in this time with COVID-19 and everything we're dealing with, people working from home and dealing with that, they're doing a great outreach in our community to help everyone. So you can find more information on them at hargrayfiber.com. Now, let's get to our guest, special guest tonight, running for Congress. Yes. We've had one candidate before. He's my second one to talk to find out a little bit more about why he's running for Congress, and this is John Eaves. Hey, John.
Hi, Rico. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to talk to you and your listening audience.
Well, I appreciate you coming out to be able to do this. Well, coming out, right? We're socially responsible. We're not quite on Zoom, but I'm using something called Switcher Studio, which is letting us do all this and at a safe distance, I guess.
Sure.
So tell me, John, with what is it, 7 congressional candidates running in this race? And that's just the Democratic side, I think, and there's 6 in the Republican.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do this? Tell me.
Well, as you pointed out, it's a crowded field. It's an open seat. The current congressman in office, the incumbent, is retiring. So it's a lot of competition, a lot of people who want the position. But I think I'm pretty unique in that, number one, Rico, I want your listeners to know that service is just part of my DNA. I've been doing this, helping out people a good part of my adult life. After I graduated from high school, went to Morehouse College. When I got to Morehouse, I rolled up my sleeves. I got in the community. Been doing that ever since. Got into political office 11 years ago as the chairman of Fulton County. After 11 years of service, moved north to Gwinnett, live in Peachtree Corners, and I decided a year ago to run for Congress. And so, to make a long story short, it's about service, it's about leadership, it's about making our communities better, and it's about plotting for our future.
Well, I'm glad you feel so good about it. I mean, you're a born Floridian, born and raised in Florida. You've came to Georgia in '95. You've done a lot. I mean, you've been Peace Corps, I think, right?
Yes, Regional Director, Peace Corps.
And you've been chairman of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners.
Yes.
So you feel, and other things that you've done. I mean, that's I could go through a list. Right. And you're a poli-sci
teacher
too, right?
Yep.
Political science.
Yes.
A political junkie, just like me. Maybe.
I love it.
This is good. So, I feel for you. There's a lot of people running, and then normally this would be a tremendously hard race to run in the normal world, where you're doing door-to-door, you're doing meetings almost every night maybe. All of that is gone. Now, how are you doing it now? How are you handling it in the, I can't even say post-COVID-19 world because we're still in it. So how are you handling that? How are you campaigning out there?
Well, Rico, that's a fair question. I mean, I used to love to play baseball, and I was a great baseball player when I could hit the fastball. But when I got old enough and that curveball started coming, it was hard for me to hit that one. And this is like a curveball. I mean, it's just a major adjustment, and understandably so. People are struggling now, trying to come to grips with the new reality.
Right.
Politics is not high on their priority. They're worried about putting food on their table, whether their job is going to stay in place. But the fact is, I'm in this race, and my asset is getting out there and knocking on doors and kissing babies and getting in front of people.
Right.
But now I've got to transform and use the internet, technology, Zoom, telephonic town hall meetings, and use the virtual world to get my message out. That's why this podcast is important, because this is one of many ways that I can get out and share my message and hopefully for the voters just to get a sense of my sincerity and my passion. So it's tough. I mean, fundraising is challenging. Particularly, I talked to a friend of mine last week who said, John, I'm going to stick to my promise to make a contribution to your campaign, but I lost $500,000 in the stock market. I have another friend who I talked to today and said she got furloughed. So it's very difficult for me to ask the potential donor for a contribution when they've lost a lot of money in terms of their retirement savings or their day-to-day living. So it's tough. You have to be sensitive, but I just have to dig down deep and just keep plugging ahead.
What's interesting, as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I used to be part of campaigns in New York and Brooklyn when I was younger. Did some stuff here early in late 1990s, early 2000s. Politics cost money. You have to spend the money in signage and all this stuff. All that really goes away. The only thing that doesn't go away really is mailings, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. The only two ways you can reach anyone is through virtual world, like a Zoom or a town hall virtual world, right?
Right.
Most of that doesn't cost a lot of money to do in this world now, right?
Right.
So at least that's a saving grace, maybe.
It is. And so the conventional wisdom, marketing as well as running campaigns, is you have to touch people so many times. And so that sort of this magical number is 7 times, believe it or not. You hit them with you touch them with a mailer, you touch them with a phone call, you touch them with a handshake, and after 7 times they remember the name John, they remember the name Rico.
Right.
But I think that, yes, there's a new reality that we have to adjust to. And so how can we really reach people through the virtual world and it's still as intimate and informative and personable? So to your point, there's no cost to this, but you also have to compete with everybody else who's also using these platforms to get their message out.
That's right. So let's get to that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things going on in this world. Obviously, President Trump, who loves to do big mass meetings and at convention centers, and he gets pumped up with that, is not doing it, right?
Right.
Biden is doing virtual town halls from, if I understand correctly, his basement in Maryland.
In Delaware.
In Delaware, there you go. And Bernie Sanders is a U.S. Senator. So, he has some availability there, although they're changing the way they're doing some of those things. So, the economy's changing for a lot of people, not only politicians, obviously, but everyone else. And I feel for them. I feel for the EMT, the fire, the police, but I also feel for the grocer that has to pack the shelves with bread and paper products. All gone this morning at Ingles, by the way. Went out there at 8 o'clock, maybe 6 rolls, 6 packages of toilet paper, and everything else was gone on those shelves. It's a different world. How do you think Americans should react and behave in this, considering where we are right now, considering where Italy is right now, where China, where some of these other countries are, like especially Italy, where it's just so bad there, so many deaths, and the New York State with Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, on the air every day. How can what's your perspective? What should we be doing? What can we think about? Where should we go, John?
Great question, Rico. I think there's several things we can do. Number one is, what makes the United States unique? For me, having traveled around the world, whether it's in Europe or Africa, South America, or Asia, people often remark that what they like about Americans is sort of this spirit that we have in terms of looking out for our brothers and our sisters. And I think that now the tendency is to be inward, support our own, protect our own, but I also think that we also have to do a two-way street in terms of making sure that we can support our brothers and our sisters who are neighbors, and even people who are outside of our neighborhood. So I think that's sort of a esprit de corps in terms of helping others is one of the things that we must hold on to. But I think that over and beyond that I think there will be sort of an assessment of how we operate as Americans in this society. If any other crisis like this comes about, how can we make sure that our healthcare system is a lot more robust and responsive? Because the way I see it right now, there is a fractionalization of our health care delivery system, and that's why it's so challenging right now to get the resources that are needed to help people out right now. So I think there's going to be a reevaluation of our healthcare system. I also think there's an opportunity for us to really critically look at our society and the great inequities that are present between the haves and the have-nots. You pointed out the people who are working in Ingles or Publix or Wendy's or Chick-fil-A. Many times, those are people who don't have any other means of living, so they have to work these low-paying jobs. Whereas other folks in our society, in our community, whether it's Peachtree Corners or Lawrenceville, a lot of them may have professional jobs that can work at home and are not necessarily in harm's way. So I think the healthcare delivery system will be reassessed, how it can be better and more equitable, and then just society in general. How can we minimize this wealth gap that we have in our society? Because I think it's very clear that people who do not have the means, who have to work, they're potentially putting themselves in harmful situations.
Well, they are, and I totally agree with you. I mean, the cashier that has to cash you out, the waste management people that have to pick up the garbage. I mean, that's an essential job.
Right.
They can't get 6 utility workers. I mean, they're housing some of these utility workers on site, pretty much, because God forbid they get sick. The specialized jobs, right? They can't do the job. It's not like they could just hire someone to come off the street. God forbid they lose that. Where would the power go? Where would the water come from?
Right.
So we're not apocalyptic yet. Thank goodness. Hopefully things will work out and this goes away. But the economy has changed, right?
It has. So Congress passed a $2 trillion stimulus package last Friday, I believe, signed by the president. So monies will be coming down in terms of a $1,200 or $1,500 check for adults who make under $75,000, I believe, and then households and small businesses. But I believe that to a certain degree, that money is, even though it's needed for the economy, for the person who's poor, they need more than that. For the person who may be managing a small business, that $10,000 may be just a drop in the bucket of what's needed. I'm not questioning anything that's given. I think that something should be given, but I think that every size fit all type approach may not necessarily be the best thing in terms of this big gap between those who have and those who do not have.
I think that, obviously I think most Americans know the basics, right? $1,200 for $75,000 and under, $2,400 for a family, married couple, let's say, a couple, $500 per kid. It's one-time payments. This thing looks like it's going to go into May, not just April. It may be June.
Right.
So I heard one senator say, listen, this is all we could do now. Most of the Senate wants to wait until the end of April to figure out, do we need to do this again?
Right.
And they're waiting piecemeal. It's like they can't even, they're trying to put everything. I know Mnuchin, I think it was Mnuchin, right? He wanted to put the dollars in your pocket as fast as possible. This is why it's so basic. That's why unemployment is so basic too, right? If you collect unemployment, they'll just plop on another $600 on top of it, but and expand it. But is there more they can do? I mean, should they be doing something? What in addition to this, they're going to ultimately pass some more legislation. I mean, that's what's going to happen. I think anyone thinking that it's not as naive. We're going to spend another couple or $3 trillion more after this, shortly within the next 60 days, I bet. What do you think should be in the next bill?
Well, I think the way you described it, I think it's right. I have heard that the House right now is thinking about the next stimulus package, so that whenever we make it through this initial period, hopefully the House, because of some of the homework they're doing right now, and ultimately the Senate to get on board, that next stimulus package will come about in a lot more seamless way. I think in terms of the coronavirus, we will know within the next 2 weeks how worse this thing is going to get, or whether the social distancing practices and the personal hygiene and the testing is going to lead to sort of a stabilization or flattening of the numbers. So I think the next 2 weeks are crucial in terms of how long this thing will persist and what will the continued impact will be on the economy. So hopefully they are discussing, negotiating, crafting up with some sort of next step, next phase stimulus that will come in place maybe as early as May or June, so that this initial outlay that goes will carry us at least for the next 2 months.
The world has changed, right?
It has.
They're going to be changing the way we're working. Even teleworking is changing, right? The way most people are working from home now. I think there are companies that are figuring out at this point, wow, we don't need these big offices. We can really do this work from home with Zoom and all the rest of the technology. I know my local boss at a small paper, he's thinking we don't need that 2,000 square foot office. We could go get a small office. Everyone can be working from home.
Right.
World is changing that way. We're going from a gig economy. We're doing this now. So how do some of these other issues that's near and dear to your heart, like immigration, like pathway to citizenship, education, maybe daycare for all or Medicare for all? I know there was a statement made, well, Italy had Medicare for all, and see what happened. I think it's apples to oranges when someone talks like that. But what issues do you see coming to the forefront in this type of world that you would like to attend to, and your positions on those?
Yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think the thing that really struck me most about this is, and I'm an educator, but how folks who are struggling paycheck to paycheck, their lives tremendously impacted as a result of this virus and the impact on the jobs that they have. And I believe that the American society will benefit better or best when there is more parity in terms of income distribution in our society. And I think that there's got to be some series of strategies that are going to right the ship in terms of this imbalance, whether it's in a more robust public education system, whether it is pay wages, minimum pay wages, a raising of the minimum wage, or whether it's job readiness training in more highly specialized areas that are better paying than they currently are. And you mentioned about how the workforce or the workplace may change. I think that there will be more of a demand for specialized skills. And how can we diversify that workforce so that people who are right now perhaps at the bottom third can have those skills to be able to have middle-class jobs. So I think that there will be a forcing of how can we better stabilize the bottom third or the bottom 2/3 of our society so that it can be a lot more equitable than it is right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think education has to be certainly a big part of that, whether it's college free, although not everyone needs college, right? Some of the stuff that's in need, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, people that work power plants and such. Some of it's just certification. Some of it's good, just knowledge, right? Apprenticeship was big in Europe and Germany. and I'm beginning to see some of that here. Beginning to see what used to be called vocational high school when I was younger. They're not calling that anymore. They're calling it maybe blended education or a different way of different phrase, but it's all the same thing, right? It's teaching a kid coming out of high school to be able to do a job. Do you see more of that coming?
Yeah, Rico, without question. So you mentioned about German education. So I visited Germany several times, and they have, I think it's called Polytechnic Institutes. I've been to Finland, and technical training is a lot more sexier in many parts of Europe than it is over here. There's a stigma attached to vocational or technical training. Right. But the reality is these individuals who are trained have a skill and they're paid very well. I'm a college professor. I love college education, university education, but you can also have an alternative type of education that is the training of the hands. And I think there has to be more of an acceptance, more of a celebration of those people who go into that track, because they too are valuable people in our society. And so I think that whatever you call it, absent of vocational, which may have had a negative stigma, we have to really begin to think in terms of how we can provide a better and more specialized workforce right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. They're high-paying jobs in many of them too. They just need skill, to be able to attend to them. What about immigration? What about the 12 million plus illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants that are in the United States? I'm firstborn American generation in my family. My parents came from Italy. They were sponsored. My father had a job when he came here. Not much money, a few dollars in his pocket, but at least he had a job and a place to stay. And he worked his way up. So what do you think about the immigrant population here? Not only are they hidden in a way, in ICE, afraid of ICE possibly, and now with COVID-19 having to deal with that. Where do you think that should change where we are right now? I
do. So like you, I'm a product of the immigrant community. My grandfather immigrated here from Jamaica in 1913, was an honorable man, hardworking man, raised 13 children, most of whom went to college. And so I have a passion and I have a sensitivity towards the immigration or the immigrant community. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, he lived here. He lived to be 99 years old.
God bless him.
He was not officially an American citizen. He was undocumented.
Really?
But he still, he came, he went to Panama, came to New York City, ultimately ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. He was not American citizen, but he was the most honorable man that I've ever met, and law-abiding and a contributor to society. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that the 12 million or so that are here who are undocumented, there should be a path towards citizenship. I think that they are already working, contributing to society, paying taxes, working jobs, albeit maybe jobs as landscapers or working in people's homes. Well, but why not provide a pathway to citizenship for all immigrants who are coming in the future? Let's be fair. Let's not be partial towards people from Europe coming in freely and being reluctant about people who are coming from Central America. I think we have to be fair and consistent. We are a society or a country of immigrants, and so I think we need to be fair and consistent. I do think that there may be some sort of criteria so that there is a process. But let's make sure we're fair and consistent with it.
Would you think of a process where, for sure, the children of undocumented immigrants could become U.S. citizens, whereas the parents that may be undocumented become permanent residents? I mean, there's a difference, right?
Yeah, there is a difference. So I was in office when President Obama was president, and he came up with the Dreamers Act, or the Dreamers position, in terms of protecting those who were born here. And I'm supportive of that. I think that legislation or that policy is sort of caught up in the court system right now. But I think that that children who are the products of those who are undocumented should have a special status because they actually were born here in the United States.
Yeah, and you do respect them because there'll be people asking, I'm sure. You do respect borders. You do believe that America should have borders and they should be strong borders every sovereign nation has that, right?
I agree. I don't think that we need to have a big wall to cross the southern border. Just sort of philosophically against that, because I think that the intention behind the current administration is more negative than positive. But I do think we need to have a process for people to come into this country.
Okay. As far as Medicare for All, which is something that Bernie Sanders talks about, and not Biden, of course, and everyone has a variation of that, right? Where you keep your private insurance, but whoever doesn't want to, maybe the rest of them go on Medicare for All, let's say. Or we eliminate private insurance and we have Medicare for All. Whole different thing. The economy would shift a little bit, right? Jobs would be, if there's no private companies doing it, then in that industry, that would change, right? Where do you fall on that? What do you believe would be the right way of going?
So you asked earlier about the impact of COVID or the coronavirus.
Right.
I think that one of the things that's going to come out of this crisis is a reassessment of our healthcare delivery system. I think it's apparent that it's fractionalized. There's a degree of inconsistencies in terms of whether you're in an urban environment versus a suburban environment or rural environment. There's an issue of, the quality of care. There's an issue of the mobilization of resources that are needed where people are. I think that if there's anything that will come along with the reassessment of the healthcare delivery system, I think there may be a case where a Medicare for All type system might not be a bad idea after all. Mm-hmm. As a member of Congress, I'm going to commit myself to being a part of the conversation of how do we get there. So pre-COVID, I was strongly Obamacare, let's improve it. But now that I'm in the midst of COVID, it's like, you know what? That it may need to be something a little bit more stronger and consistent than what we have in place. Mm. And even if we try to tweak what we have in place, maybe the aspirational Medicare for All that Bernie Sanders and to a lesser degree Elizabeth Warren was saying might not be a bad idea. Let's see how we can work towards that over a course of X number of years. Yeah. Because I think Germany has a nationalized system. I think France has a nationalized system. I'm not sure about Italy, but I know Germany does. And they've dealt with the coronavirus a lot more effectively than we have.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think culturally, too, it's a little different, though.
I agree. I mean, there's some nuances. I mean, in terms of the culture and the lifestyle, whatever, of the people. Yeah. But I do think that there may be some degree of an answer that's a little bit better than what we've been doing right now.
And no one's saying that the government will be socialist government. No one's saying we're not going to have a capitalist system, a free market system. We're just talking about one segment of what we do, and we do really well, that maybe we could do well for everyone else in this country, no?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, the one thing that I keep looking at is one of the things is that, with the undocumented immigrants, number one, they can't afford insurance. They don't have insurance.
Right.
They're maybe afraid to go to the hospital or to get checked for coronavirus. And that's not a good place to be as a country, right?
It's not a good place to be, especially with all the resources.
Yeah. Excuse my cat.
You have company.
Going off on me. So, we've discussed, we've gone around about a lot of different issues. Is there another issues, John, that you would like to talk about and get into this as well?
Yeah, I think that the district that I want to represent is a very special district. District 7 is a population of 40,000 people. It's one of the most diverse jurisdictions in the entire country. I think that we have the potential of being a model of how we do it. And I think that diversity is wonderful, but I also think it's important for us to have what I call inclusion. So how can everybody be at the table in terms of really supporting and benefiting from all the services that are present within District 7? And I have a history of bringing people together and working towards a common goal. And I do believe that the leadership that I can provide, along with the representation that I can provide, can really work towards making District 7, which is 80% of Gwinnett County and about 20% of Forsyth County, a model district for the entire nation in terms of being a model, not just diversity, but also inclusion.
What do you think about the fact that the state had to move, obviously because of the situation, the primary to May 19th, and now we're mailing 6-point-something million absentee ballots. Now, some people may get confused. They might think that's the ballot, but that's actually requesting a ballot. Mm-hmm. You think that's going to be complicated? How do you think? Do you have confidence in the system at this point?
That's a fair question. I'm a little conflicted. For me, having served as a chairman of a county government, and I have experience where you change a precinct from a library to a school, and the confusion that comes with the changing of a precinct where a person goes. Mm-hmm. If that is confusing to some of our electorate, this whole process that we're doing right now can be confusing. And so I think it's an effort to try to mitigate a tough situation, but I'm not sure if it's a perfect solution to the situation. Yeah. I think that we have to almost consider, Rico, potentially pushing this whole election date back into June, perhaps.
Wow.
Just seeing how the coronavirus unfolds, and ideally there's a degree of stability in our society, mm-hmm. maybe even a little bit more freedom of movement, and along with the mailing of the ballots in some sort of controlled way, still providing the opportunity for people to go into a precinct. Because I just think that at this point, solely relying on mailing it may not be successful.
I think there is the ability to. I think Georgia will still keep the ability for voting in person, starting April 27th. I don't know how that would work.
Yeah,
you got to be 6 feet apart. You can't have more than 10 people in a location unless they change that by that point. But that's the issue, Rico. I think I'm not a betting person and I'm not an odds person, but I think that from where I sit, there may be a strong possibility of pushing this thing off a little bit further. Yeah, seems to be. It's it's changing every day. So who knows where we're going to be. Certainly it's tough for you, tough for every candidate to get out their message, especially when it's such a crowded field too. That's not easy to begin with in a normal election. So I feel for you. I hope that you can get your message out. We're at the end of our time together. So what I want to ask you is this. I want you to be able to what I always say, you should ask for the vote. So give you 1 or 2 minute elevator speech, if you will, ask for that vote, and tell people where they can find more information about you.
Well, first of all, again, Rico, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience. Give me an opportunity to let people know who I am. So once again, John Eaves, and I'm running to be the next representative of District 7, Gwinnett County, Forsyth County in Congress. And this is an opportunity for the citizens of the district to vote and elect a leader. I think that leadership matters. And I certainly have the background, 11 years of running a major local government in the state of Georgia and the metropolitan Atlanta area, strong track record, strong professional and personal and academic credentials. But more importantly, I certainly have a desire to serve. and lead and to represent. And so, friends, I'm going to be running on a platform of a stronger healthcare delivery system, accessibility and affordability of healthcare for all citizens of our district as well as the entire country, smart immigration policy, smart, fair gun control policy, transit. Even though we talked a little bit about the workforce changing, to me, transit is still important. We are part of a region. And for Gwinnett County to not be connected by way of a regional transit system, I think is a mistake. So I'll be a proponent of that. But I'm also going to be a strong proponent of small and medium-sized businesses, to do all that I can to support them, to make them more vibrant in District 7, but also position them to do procurement with state and local government as well as federal government. So I'm very excited about my candidacy. I've been running for the past year. I've had a chance to go to constituencies and neighborhoods throughout the district. We truly have a very special district, and I think that most citizens right now are hungry for somebody who's a leader, who can provide strong leadership and be a great representative. So again, my name is John Eaves. Check me out by going to my website, which is Eaves, EAVES, FOR, EavesForCongress.com. So Rico, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from your listening audience.
Sure. Hang in there with me for a second. I'm just going to sign off with everyone and tell them where to find some information. I want to thank everyone for joining me. I just noticed that the state of Georgia just went over 4,000 coronavirus identifications. So be safe out there. I've been out there wearing surgical gloves, going shopping at Ingles and Publix, and it's not a lot of people out there. They're there early morning. So just be safe out there. Be thankful when you see the fire and the police and the EMTs out there. Even the people manning the grocery stores, the supermarkets, they're there for us. People putting on the lights at night, the water that we drink. Just a lot of things, that cascading effect of what's going on. Even though we may be working from home, there are people working out in the streets to make sure that our world is still out there. So be safe and be good and just be thankful.
And I echo those comments. Thank you so much, Rico.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Life with Rico Figliolini. You can listen to our live stream on Spreaker every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. or on demand at iHeartRadio, Spotify, and iTunes. Don't forget to like our Facebook page for notification of our live video streams of the show. Catch our other podcast shows at PeachtreeCornersLife.com.